Hi, welcome to this mini webinar. My name is Marco and I'm going to give you a short introduction to AuditXP. So usually when we talk about AuditXP, one of the important things to understand is that it's used in combination with BowTieXP. Of course, there are functions and parts of the software which can be used on its own, but the optimal use of AuditXP is when you combine that with your already existing bowties. Today, I'm going to guide you through 4 different topics. First of all, I'm going to quickly explain to you what AuditXP is and what it is used for. Additionally to that, we're going to take a look into the concept of barrier-centric inspections, followed by how this concept could be applied to an existing bowtie. This is something I'm going to show you in the software directly. Finally, I'm going to talk about what the next steps would be after applying AuditXP. With that being said, let's quickly jump into the second part of the session. So what is AuditXP and what is it used for? As the name might imply, it is a tool which allows you to focus your audits and inspections on barriers or controls. Initially, it allows you to audit your safety barriers or controls. By doing so, it allows you to verify your performance data and integrity of those controls. Link that back to the bowtie diagrams, which already captures your scenarios related to those controls. And by doing so, it allows you to visualize the results in the context of the risks you're trying to manage. Finally, the end goal is, of course, to find non-conformities and initiate improvement in order to complete the PDCA cycle. So what is the concept on barrier-centric inspections then? So barrier-centric inspections are an integral part of the barrier-centric damming cycle as how we see it. In our philosophy, the barrier or the control is centralized in the middle of that plan, do, check, act cycle. Initially, as an organization, you start by developing your plan. Usually this is done within BowTieXP. That is, of course, your paper world. That is more or less the assumption, the subject matter knowledge on how certain processes or risks are going to be managed. After that, we proceed as an organization into the execution phase. This is usually where you execute your core business, you execute the plan which you have created, in which bowtie server can assist, but is not per se necessary. However, after the execution phase, we get into the checking phase. In this phase, we want to understand what can be improved or understand what deviated from our initial plan. In the checking or learning phase, within the portfolio of the software we offer, we allow you to either use AuditXP or IncidentXP. IncidentXP is usable when you are looking to incidents or things which are already happening. So if something bad happens, the best thing we can do is learn from it. However, if you want to be more proactive, you could apply AuditXP. And AuditXP would allow you to do that checking phase and measure the performance of your controls before they are used and before you discover that they are maybe not as good as you wanted them to be. Of course, based on those results, you can then continue to the acting phase. Together with the reporting possibilities of bowtie server and BowTieXP, you could then improve and decide where resources should be allocated. Based on that, you can then continue and improve your initial plan. With that being said, barrier-centric inspections are closely related to traditional audits, where within traditional audits, the main focus is on taking one of the pillars from our safety management system and auditing that until we know whether it is compliant or not. With traditional, or in this case, barrier-centric inspections, we are focusing on a scenario. So imagine having your bowtie, take one scenario from that bowtie, then take one barrier or control from that scenario. And then we are going to use that control or barrier and ask questions which are relatable to every single of your management system pillars. And by getting those questions, we will understand more on how our control or barrier is performing. So if we have a control we have chosen, we might ask questions related to training and competency. We might ask questions related to maintenance. We might ask questions related to work procedures and time scheduling. Of course, imagine that if this is your own organization, you might have different pillars within your management system, which then would be applied or used within this process. By using that data, instead of showing the traditional auditing results as a compliance number of, for instance, 95% on maintenance and 90% on training, we would be able to show our results per scenario as you would look at them throughout a bow tie. By doing that, you might just discover that two of your critical barriers in a very dangerous scenario are actually underperforming. Initially, by just looking at your traditional audit, you would not be able to spot that because they might be part of that small red space or small red part of your results. So initially, by looking only at the traditional auditing, you might get the feeling that you are safe enough because you are compliant above a certain percentage, which we find acceptable. However, if we really dig deeper and take a look at the scenario approach, then we would be able to discover that certain scenarios are not protected as good as they should be. With that being said, of course, when we apply the barrier-centric inspections, we tend to ask questions about all of those supporting activities which should keep the barrier integrity in place. So if we take the use of the fire extinguisher as an example, instead of just saying whether this is a decent barrier and whether it's performing as good as we think it does, we can ask questions which will make sure that we know that the integrity of this barrier is good. So we can ask a question related to maintenance. For instance, are the extinguishers well maintained and filled? We, of course, can also ask questions related to the training. Is the personnel capable of using this equipment? And finally, we can ask questions about the procedures as well. For instance, is the personnel aware of where to find the device? Once we answer those questions, we create a survey and send that out to our population workforce and collect those results. We will be able to see the performance of our controls based on the answers we've collected from our task force. So in this case, on question number 1, related to maintenance, we would be able to see that with 2 answers, we got a full green bar, so 2 positive answers. So this one is performing like we would like to see. For the second question, we can see partially a red bar and partially a green bar, which indicates that from the 2 questions, we got 1 positive answer and 1 negative answer. While for question number 3 about the procedures, we can see we only have a half green bar available, which tells us that 1 question has been answered positively and 1 question has been answered neutrally. So by looking at this picture, instead of assuming or just going by the gut feeling and thinking that this barrier is going to be effective, we now are able to pinpoint where the weak spot is. We now are able to say that training should be improved, or at least we should look into it in order to verify that this is as good as it can get. And by doing so, we would be able to keep that barrier healthy and discover its performance before something bad happens. Of course, based on that, we could collect all the data from all of our controls or barriers and visualize them on the bow tie. And then if you look at this from a scenario-based perspective, it would be easy to see which barriers are underperforming. So we can see one barrier with a lot of red in the left upper corner, but another one in the right below corner. So this one obviously is the only barrier on this line. It would initially tell us that this is maybe something which we really want to look deeper into it, because first of all, we are getting a lot of red answers, so it is probably going to fail when we need it. But other than that, it is also our only barrier available on this line. So if this one fails, we will be fully exposed to the negative impact of this specific consequence. And in order to prevent that from happening, we should allocate our resources and make sure that this barrier is as healthy as it could be. So this would, of course, kickstart the treatment process and further actioning of it. So then the question gets around the corner on how this concept would be applied to an existing bow tie. And in order to show you that, I'm going to switch to the desktop software, which you all know as AuditXP. So once you are in the software, in AuditXP, obviously you should already have your bow tie available for you to work on. The next thing you want to do is go to the tree view and spot your audits container. Probably it will be empty, but if not, you might already have some of your audits or example audits available in there. If you want to create a new audit, you can right-click on this container and select the new audit option. Here we can provide a new audit. So let's call this the test audit. And you can click on OK. After you've done so, you will see that a new container will appear below that audits container. You can expand it, and in this section you will find two additional containers. The questions container, you should look at this as the entire pool of questions which you want to apply for this specific type of audit, and your surveys, which can be considered your subsets of questions. So you can imagine over time you will have 100, 200, maybe even thousands of questions which you have created in the software or imported from an external source. And then you can use those surveys to say, these 5 questions I want to create a survey on, and then send it to this specific or particular group of users. With that being said, it is time to start and create a couple of questions. So to create new questions, you can right-click on the questions container and then simply create a new question. First of all, we need to provide a code. So let's say we are going to create questions for more and more of these barriers. Therefore, I would like to allocate those codes based on the barriers. So in this case, I would use a simple coding of 1.1 equaling first threat, first control. Here I would ask the question related to the maintenance. As we can see, we have a high-level alarm with operator response. We might ask multiple questions. Some of them might be related to the operator response part. Others might be related to the high-level alarm. So in this case, I'm going to create a question related to the high-level alarm. I'm going to drag this window next to the barrier so everybody can see it entirely, and I'm going to provide a question. So in this case, I'm going to ask, is the high-level alarm maintained within the last 2 weeks? Question mark. In the description, I can provide additional explanation, or maybe even if I want, I can provide criteria. The next thing I want to do is provide an ordinal answer value list. If I provide more than 2 answers, it will not be Boolean logic anymore. It will use those options in order to create a scale. That's something I'm going to show you with the second question. For now, we are going to say yes, and we are going to say no. Because this option is ticked, the yes answer would be considered the positive one, while the no answer would be considered the negative one. After this, we can click on OK, and we can drag and drop that question on our barrier. And there it is. Now we could create a second question. So as you can see, the system is going to keep coding it automatically, but if I want to change it, I would be able to do so as well. So let's create a second question. In this case, I want to ask something related to the operator response. So in this case, I'm going to ask, when was the operator trained according to the latest procedure regarding high-level alarm response? Question mark. So now I don't want to know yes and no. Let's say I want to have three different answering options. First one would be more than 6 months ago. Second would be between 2 and 6 months ago. And the third one would be less than 2 months ago. Obviously, the less than 2 months ago would be considered the best possible answer. The between 2 and 6 months ago, we could consider the neutral answer. However, the more than 6 months ago would be considered a negative answer. In order to create this in the system, I would tick the other box. In other words, the negative answer is appearing first in the ordinal list. So this one is considered the negative one. I'm going to click OK. And I'm going to drag and drop this question on the applicable or relevant barrier. So now we have two barriers in place. So now I'm going to use my magic machine in order to populate the entire bow tie. So now all the questions have been created and linked to their according or relevant controls. The next step can begin, which is the creation of a survey. In order to do so, you can collapse the questions container, and a new survey can be created by right-clicking on the surveys container and selecting New Survey. By doing so, you can once again provide a code and a name. So let's call this the tank storage survey. And let's click onto the second tab and add the relevant questions. So in this case, you could use a filter to search through your list of questions or apply certain values in order to create subselections. But for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to select all of the questions and move them to the right side, which means that I'm going to include all of my questions within my survey. After doing so, I'm going to confirm by clicking OK, and that will create my survey. The next step I want to do is to double click on my survey, and I will have the possibility to either export a fill out or import a fill out. So in this case, I'm going to export a fill out, after which I'm going to show you how that would look in Excel. So once you have exported your fill out, you can either send it to the applicable target audience for them to fill it out, or you can open it yourself and test run it yourself. As you can see, per row, you will be able to see the specific questions, and then in every other column, you will have the possibility to provide your answer from a drop-down list or to leave a remark. So in this case, let's quickly go through the questions. So is there a high alarm maintained within the last 2 weeks? Let's say yes. When was the operator trained according to the latest? When was the operator trained according to the latest procedure regarding high-level alarm response? Let's say between, or actually less than 6 months ago. Also, we're going to answer the question, is the independent high-level trip system implemented? So let's say yes. And so on and so on. We could continue by answering all of those questions. So I will do that in a quick manner and then show you how we can import this back into the system. So after you're done with the fill out and completing all the necessary fields, you can save this in a convenient place or send it back to the person who asked you to fill this out. After this, it is only remaining to import everything into AuditXP. So now we are back at AuditXP. We can click on the Import Fillouts button, locate the file where we know it is saved, and find it for importing. After we do so, we will get a message that on this date, Marco has provided 11 answers, and when we click OK, the results will populate the different questions. We can now close the survey window. We can even turn off the linked questions because for now that's not really important anymore. The link has already been created. What we are interested in is showing the results. So by going into filters and then turning on the audit filter, we will be able to see the results below every of the available barriers. So now based on this information, I would be able to open up any of those questions by clicking on it and looking into the specific answers which were provided. In this example, of course, we only have one answer from the test survey we have created. I could expand this specific set of answers, and I could see which survey it was part of, who did the fill out and on which date, and it would also show me where, in which section of the answers it is located. So in this case, in the no part. If I open a question which also has that additional symbol with it, when I click on it, you would be able to see an additional comment. So if I open it, I would be able to see the answer and when it is created and by whom it is created, but also an additional remark which has been added by the person who did the fill out. So based on this information, I would be able to spot deviations. Here I can see we have an unwanted result. It's a negative result. It's not the worst possible result, but it could most certainly be better. So based on this information, I would be able to do further analysis and then proceeding to the acting part in order to make the approach of managing this risk further improve, of course. With that being said, let's quickly jump back into the presentation and take a look at the last topic we are going to cover today. So what are the next steps after AuditXP? So in order to tell you more about that, let's quickly take a look at that barrier-centric Deming cycle. We have done and performed the auditing part. The next part we would like to do is do the acting part. So we've done the checking part, we want to proceed into the acting part. And in order to do so, we might want to do further analysis or even have more possibilities than just sending out the surveys in order to perform the inspections through Excel. So if we take a basic look at the next step, it would automatically also include bowtie server in it. In order to tell you more about the possibilities, I first want to give you a short introduction to what bowtie server is. bowtie server is an enterprise barrier management tool which can be implemented modularly. It will allow you to streamline your risk management across different divisions and aggregate all your barrier management data. And with additional features such as the action tracking feature, it will allow you for a structured follow-up of the treatment you were trying to apply. So if we find a non-conformities within our auditing part, in the inspections part, we could actually use that and create a follow-up action or a follow-up plan in order to improve on this. So bowtie server as a central repository for your bowtie files and a single source of truth for your entire organization when it comes to risk management could allow you to streamline and aggregate that data in one place, analyze it, learn from it, and then feed it back into your organization. Of course, bowtie server is not only that centralized bowtie storage. It will allow you to analyze your data based on certain information. So you could use your server in order to look into your bowtie registers, to look up your barrier history or your barrier registers and do further analysis. And that analysis and analysis part of the system is complemented by the ability to connect your performance data. So if you want to have your barrier performance data, such as your incident data or maintenance data or audit data, you could do that using bowtie server. Compared to BowTieXP and AuditXP, bowtie server is always online and is always available. Of course, we are missing the final part in the below corner of this screen, and that's where the platform for the applications is shown. So here we are allowing you to actually do that action tracking. You can have a wiki documents page and also a hazard module. However, all of this is not really important in order to cover the next steps after AuditXP. In order to let you know more about that, I would like to focus on the AuditXP features within bowtie server. And in order to let you learn about those, first of all, I would like to introduce the possibility to actually upload the audits you have created within AuditXP and then assign that to your workforce. So as your workforce might have their own user credentials and the possibility to access the system, you would be able to either assign audits to every one of them or schedule your audits in order for them to recur every once in a while. And the periodic part on that, so how often it should happen, is all up to you to decide. Of course, there is an additional use to this. So when we start using bowtie server to assign audits to people, they don't need to use Excel anymore. It allows for a lot more flexibility because you can use your mobile phone to fill out questions, or you can use the responsive web environment in order to fill it out on a computer, regardless of which resolution you're using on your computer. So once you start filling out your audits or your surveys in this case, you would be able to see a progress bar. You would immediately be able to visualize items on the bowtie and see how those results relate to a bowtie. You could show additional details on any question, provide a remark, see to which barriers this is linked, provide evidence, so link certain images, which might be your evidence in this specific case. And of course, if you want, you can also create follow-ups. So if in this case we have found an audit outcome, we can create that. So in this specific case, let's say based on our auditing or inspection, we have seen that there is a gap when the first aid trained responders are not available. That's what we're going to create. So the first aid response not available during shift breaks. That's what we have created. And now when we continue, we are also able to do a follow-up on that, not per se by the people who are filling out this audit, but people who are responsible for this part of the job. So once you have a non-conformity and you have entered it into the system, it will be captured in its own register underneath the treatment tab. And that, of course, allows you to start a follow-up, do a full treatment on it, and make sure that this doesn't consist on happening over and over again. Of course, the full power of bowtie server in combination with AuditXP is especially seen when you are going into further analysis or details. So just to give you a brief example on it, if we compare our sites to each other based on their different job title, which it has filled out a certain survey, we would be able to see the differences between the shift managers and the maintenance technicians when they are filling out the same survey. And if we then say, well, let's compare Liverpool Docks, we would be able to see that the shift managers are more pessimistic or more negative giving their answers compared to the maintenance technicians. With other words, this might be something which is worth analyzing further. If we see a deviation, that's probably something we can manage. So this is just an example of how you can do your analysis using AuditXP combined with bowtie server. Of course, we could do also a lot of different analysis bits and pieces. For instance, the barrier ranking page would allow you to really look into your barriers and see the combined and aggregated results of all of the surveys which relate to that barrier. So imagine that you have created a lot of questions for a lot of surveys and a lot of people are answering those. You could actually see combined what that would add up for every single control. So here we would be able to see that in the Liverpool Docks group, we have a hazard where we actually have a control which we have assessed as good. It is a human, active human type of control which the shift manager is accountable for. However, we still see that it is really underperforming. And that while we actually have a good value linked to it. So this might be something we want to take a further look into. We could click through and see all the details related to this control. Of course, doing audits can also be, and doing inspections can also be useful when you are doing this with the purpose of showing your compliance or measuring against a certain regulatory set of actions or regulations. So for instance, bowtie server can also help you by just showing exactly that. So in this case, an example of the Energy Institute process safety framework, where you can show the coverage, how many of your objectives from your regulatory documents are actually covered by either an activity or a control. And after you've done so, you can actually show the results per objective, how that is actually aggregating the results. So maybe if for one objective you have more than one control available, which answers to that objective, aggregating those results and displaying them against the objectives would give you a better understanding how you're doing for that specific topic. And this, of course, will limit the amount of surprises you would get when you get an external audit or when you need to improve something. So all in all, AuditXP by itself would allow you to connect your performance data onto your bowties, and then bowtie server would allow you to automate that process further and do a thorough analysis on it, and even include your regulatory topics into that analysis and measure against your compliance ratings. So with that being said, I want to thank you for watching this video. I would like to, of course, invite you to request a free trial and test the software yourself. If you want to learn more, visit our website at www.cgrisk.com. And for now, I want to say until the next time and have a nice day. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.